Hey guys, Sean here from QuazTech. This is the first video from the ROG shed. It's been a labour of love over the last 3 months or so, and just in time for Asus's 30th anniversary graphics card celebration. This all kicked off back in July and it's going right through till about now, 7th of October. And today I'm just going to show you a video of my Asus graphics card story, where it started and now where it's pretty much ended. And that's due to the fact that I've pretty much found everything that I need to find. For those who know me, they all know that I've been collecting ROG motherboards since about 2014, but then my attention turned towards the ROG graphics cards, and they're a little bit harder to find. And that's largely due to the fact that there wasn't a lot of matrix, especially the matrix cards. The stock levels down in Australia compared to like Europe and USA were much less. So basically most of my graphics cards have come from overseas. There's very few that I've actually found in Australia. I don't have anything super early. The earliest I have is this guy, and it does have the ROG branding, and it is an 8600 GTS silent. So it is pure passively cooled. This is sort of the humble beginnings of where ROG started. But from where I started was back in 2012, believe it or not, with two of these. Was a GTX 670 Direct CU2 top editions, and I actually got these out of America because they weren't available in Australia at all. So they served me well for many years, and then I actually went over to the ROG side with this bad boy. Now this is a GTX 780 Ti Matrix. I absolutely fell in love with this card. I can't even remember exactly when I got it. That's a really good question. It was probably about 2015. Secondhand, because in Australia these were actually 1,000 Australian dollars when they were new. I ended up buying two of those and running them in SLI with a 6700K for a long time. So from that, I actually started putting my attention towards the limited edition graphics cards, which is sitting here to my right, and that is the Mars 2, the Aries 2, the Aries 3, and the Mars 760. Now, despite the Mars 760 not being a limited edition graphics card, it was still part of the Mars family, so ultimately I had to have it for the collection. But they came from all over the world. I think I only had one, which was the Mars 2 and the Aries 2. They were the only two that were actually purchased here in Australia. But then after that, I started diverting my attention to all the Matrix cards, which is not easy. Now, the Matrix cards started way back with the 9800 GT and the 9600 GT, exactly the same cooler. They did use the same cooler design for multiple models. And then they went to the first dual fan cooler design, which is the 4870 Matrix. I only acquired this card probably about 3 weeks ago, just in time for this video. And it was incredibly hard to find. Get a close up on that. It's a really well-presented card, especially for the age and for the time. So that card was extremely difficult to find, and that one came out of the Netherlands. After that, we're moving forward to a slightly different cooler design, and we've got the HD 5870 Matrix and the GTX 285 Matrix. They both run with exactly the same cooler, 2-slot design. They sort of had RGB with the Matrix, but it was like, it worked on your temperature of your card, not something you could program in. After that, we had another change in cooler design. Now this started with the GTX 580. This one here is actually a 280X. The 280X, the 7970, and the GTX 580 all shared exactly the same cooler. And then we started moving into 3-slot designs. And then after that, we moved to arguably the best Matrix design that has ever existed. Have a look at that. It is absolutely timeless. 2-slot design, a true 2-slot design. And they kept this design for the 980 And then the 980 Ti was slightly modified, but a 3-slot design. And this is actually a 290X. Again, absolutely timeless. I love that design, and I've got a massive infatuation with these cards. Now they did something a bit special, and this is kind of relevant to this video because this is what their 20th anniversary hardware looked like. They got a matrix and they made it gold. 20th anniversary on the back. So exactly the same card, but they just give it the gold treatment, 2-slot design. Everything about this screams premium. Then they went from that to the 980 Ti, also for the 20th anniversary, and the cooler is identical to the 980 Ti Matrix, which we'll get to in a second. This was their 20th anniversary of making graphics card. Then we move to the 980 Ti Matrix. I searched for this card for a very long time, and now I've actually acquired 2 of them. Both with varying condition. This one's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty nice. And they went with this orange and gray theme, which absolutely killed it. They did it with Maximus 8 Extreme Assembly 2 motherboard, and that thing was, and coupled with these cards, was absolutely amazing. Now from there, we moved to an absolute unicorn, which was the 2080 Ti Matrix. And I was actually offered one of these many years ago. It was super expensive and I said no. This one popped up on eBay again about 3 weeks ago. I found the 4870 and the 2080 Ti Matrix pretty much in the same week. This one came from Hungary and the 4070 came from the Netherlands. But this was the first card and the only card to have like an air cooler, but that's actually a radiator under there. It's got an all-in-one hiding on a cold plate that sits directly over the GPU die. The rest of the card is pretty much designed like an air-cooled card. So it was a bit of a hybrid. So yeah, that one was pretty awesome to find. It's not too dissimilar from the 2080 Ti Strix, which I also have. So yeah, the design was pretty similar to that. Then moving from there, we have the one and only 4090 Matrix. This is running another all-in-one design with a huge radiator. It's still got the protective plastic on it. And this thing is just ridiculous. The design I absolutely love. It takes me back to the original Aries actually, which I'll try and hold both of these up without dropping anything. But this is the original Aries, or Aries 3, and you can see the similarities between the two. So this one was pure water block though, and this one has got an all-in-one. So they've sort of done a bit of a throwback to the Aries, which I love that when they go back to original designs, and the 5090 is now a compilation of all of these graphics cards. If you know, you know sort of thing, if you're in the industry and you sort of know what they've done over the years. So yeah, so that was my Matrix collection. It's only really come together finally in the last 3 or 4 weeks. To see them all spread out on the desk and see this evolution, this timeline of technological advances is pretty awesome. So speaking of which, I'll move across to the limited edition cards. The limited edition ROG, so this is the Mars. The original Mars was a GTX 295. So it's actually 2 separate PCBs. If you can see the 2 pinouts on there. And they're sandwiched together with a cooler in the middle. So there's a few iterations to the GTX 295. They had this one, which is probably the closest thing to the Mars. Again, they had 2 power connectors, 2 PCBs sandwiched together with a cooler in the middle. You can see the fin stack in the middle there. And then they went from that design, because it wasn't very efficient thermally, to something like this. And you had 2 cores here, 2 GPU cores with a fan in the middle, and it blew basically front and back. But the Mars was not designed on this, it was designed on this. So, not sure if you can see that there, very similar design. So yeah, so that's sort of the story behind the Mars card. So the Mars 2 was kind of the first of the gigantic graphics cards. It was called the Brick. and this thing probably weighs close to 5 kilos. It runs 2 GTX 580 cores, and it was absolutely awesome. It ran 3 8-pin PCIe power. So yeah, this thing was pretty awesome. And then we moved from that to the Mars, not really the Mars 3, but the Mars 760. Big story. This was kind of where NVIDIA stepped in and started limiting what AIBs could do with graphics cards. The original Mars 3 was actually 2 GTX 680 cores, and they nerfed it. So this was the end result of that. It's still a Mars card, wasn't limited edition, wasn't crazy. That was the outcome of that little debacle with NVIDIA. On AMD's side, we've got the Aries. This has got pure copper heat sinks on it. Let's see that. So these are HD 5870 cores, and this thing was absolutely awesome. Then we move to the Aries 2. It's got 2 7970 cores on it. The fan in the middle is just there to cool the VRMs. And then we've got a 120 millimeter external radiator that used to cool it. Worked pretty well, wasn't a bad card. Looked really, really nice. And then of course, my favorite card of all time, which is the Aries 3. And this ran 2 290X cores, EK water block, factory. You had no other choice but to put this into a full loop or not run it at all. I've chosen not to run this card at all. I think I've hooked it up to water one time, and that's the way it'll stay. Probably the limited edition stuff and the Matrix stuff, I've still got a bunch of, like, there's Poseidon cards and there's a whole bunch of other ROG cards that I haven't shown today. I'll go into a bit more of a deep dive into those cards when I get a bit more time. That was a bit of a brief rundown of what's happening here with my collection, and I will go into it in a bit more detail further down the track. Hope you really enjoyed taking a brief walkthrough through the history of ROG graphics cards from 2006 right up to last year. So, and I want to congratulate Asus on 30 years of making GPUs, and I hope that we see another 30 years out of them, and I really don't know what to expect, especially from ROG, so it's going to be exciting times. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.